Well, hello, and thank you for watching my inaugural episode of a new YouTube channel I'm kicking off today called Woodworking with Jerry. I'm Jerry. And on this channel, I'm looking forward to sharing with you some tips, some of the tools and practices I've used for many years for one of my favorite hobbies, woodworking, obviously. I started out woodworking about 20 years ago. Started out as a hobby, as it does, I'm sure, for most people. That hobby got a bit out of control. And then I kept making stuff, and my house started filling up with furniture. And I figured, hey, I need to start selling some of this stuff. So I turned that hobby into a business. Did that for a while, and then now it's a hobby again. Just retired, so I figured, why not? This gives me a chance to combine two things I like to do, actually. Woodworking and photography, videography, that sort of thing. So again, thanks for tuning in. This inaugural episode is going to be about how to make dovetails, hand-cut dovetails. Go through the process, things I use. Sorry, is my AC kicking on? And just kind of go through it with some poplar as a demonstration. I hope you find it useful, and if so, please like and subscribe. I hope to keep giving or putting out content. I have lots of ideas on new things I want to do. So again, thanks for tuning in. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here is mark up the boards that we're going to use to make these dovetail joints out of. What I have here is just some poplar. Obviously, you can use anything. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. Yeah, so let's get started. What I do first is, and I'm not, just so you know, since this is just a demonstration, I'm not worried about grain as you would normally do, as you would need to do. And then marking which is the inside of the drawer or the outside of the drawer or the casework or whatever. All things that, I'm going to assume you guys do anyway, it would normally do based on the piece you're going to make, where you're going to place it and that kind of thing. What this is going to be about is the technique for cutting the dovetails. So with that, first thing I'm going to do is obviously mark out the dovetails on the board here. I've already decided I'm going to do three tails, so I'm going to have the center of one at 1 inch, one at 3 inch, and one at 5 inch, and one there. All right, so those three marks there are going to be the center of where the dovetails are going to be. And so now what I'm going to do is actually figure out how wide I want the top of the tails to be. Again, use my ruler. And for this one, I want it to be, I'm going to say 1 inch. I'm doing 3 tails. The one in the center will be wider. So for the outside, I'll have 1 inch wide. So doing 1, let me mark at the top. 1 inch and 1 inch, half inch on either side. For the center one, I want it to be 2 inches wide. So I'm going to go 1 inch on either side. And then for the one on the outside, I want, again, to be 1 inch wide. So I'm going to go a half inch out on either side. Okay. And so now I mark out the actual shape of the tails. I have these things I bought. They came in a set of 2 several years ago. One I had marked for hardwood, one for softwood. I mean, you can use whatever you want. You can use something like this, whatever kind of marking gauge. There's a lot of them out there in the market, I'm sure you know, that you can use to trace out the shape of the tails. But this is something I use, using it for a long time, and I find it pretty easy. So let's go with it. So now I just mark out the general shape. Yeah. And then, also, I'm going to mark, I like about this, I can also mark the top, which I'll have to transfer across the rest of the board as we go. Okay, so this one is going to be like this. Let's see if you can see that. So now you have, let's see here, the basic shape of the dovetails marked out. Okay. And then, as I said, what I need to do there, well, actually, first, before I do that, what I also do is mark out the shoulders of the joint. And again, I have this kind of marking gauge you can use. There's different ones in the market. I've had something like this for a while. I mean, they have the little round ones you could use, whatever. But this I found pretty easy, and I like it that I can set the board in the actual marking gauge. Oops. And then set the knife. Actually, I've already done it for a 3/4 piece of lumber. Set the knife just outside of the width of the board. Because what I like to do when I cut my dovetails by hand like this is I like them to be a little proud. So that when I finish them off and do my planing and then sanding, it just helps to fill the joint out and make it look nice when it's done. So let me mark out the shoulders of both the tail and pin board with the marking gauge. Okay, and so now we have the tail board, the tails on one of the boards traced out. Now let me show you, if you're making like an end table and you want to cut, let's say, the drawer sides, both tail boards at the same time, to expedite things you can, and then you just fit the pin board on either side at the end. Let me show you how I would do that. So make sure they're even, and then clamp them in place so they don't move. Okay, let me confirm that. Okay, and now I could, let's get them in the vise so we can finish marking and start sawing. Okay, so now you can see where I have traced over the top of the dovetails across both boards. I have the lines marked where I need to saw. The boards are in the vise, so now what I'm going to do is actually saw out the tails, again, for both sides at the same time. And there's several different saws you can use, almost anything you're comfortable with. I have several of them myself. I have, this is a push saw, Lee Nielsen push saw. You can use pull saws. Again, almost anything you're comfortable with. I like this one just because it's a slightly thicker blade. And when I'm cutting on the push, I feel like I have a little more control in terms of where I'm guiding the saw. So that's why I use it. But again, you could use any saw that you feel comfortable with. So let me just get the angle here to help me stay on course. Okay. Now let's start cutting. I want to make sure I can cut on the right side of the line. Okay. All right. Let's see here. One more. Okay. And so obviously you flip the board over and do the other sides the same way. Okay, so now that we have cut the tails on the board, the next thing we have to do is take out the waste. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. As with anything in woodworking, there's always a different option. And I've used like table saw, band saw. You could cut off the edges on the shoulders and use a coping saw to remove the in between the tails. Various ways, but I'll show you kind of how I've done it. One way I like to do it, among other options. So first, obviously, I make sure you don't make any mistakes, I will mark out the waste that I'm removing so I don't take the wrong thing off. And what I'm going to do on the outside edges of the tails is use my table saw. I find it makes a nice clean cut on the edges. I'm able to make sure I'm taking off the same amount on both sides easily. And yeah, it's just something for getting one drawer, a small enough piece like this, I find using the table saw to remove the edges of the tails is just easy. So let me show you how I do that. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is set the height of the blade. So what I do there, let me just pull the sled back. And what I'm trying to do is set the height so that I'm cutting off, most of this, and I don't want to cut into the tail, but most of this piece here, the pieces on the end, which are the same. So let me just do that. I'll do it on this side so you can see. Well, that was pretty easy to figure out. Let's see here. Listen to that. And raise. Yeah. And I don't mind if I leave a little bit. I can take the rest off with the chisel. And then I want to line up the blade, obviously, on the shoulder mark that I made earlier with the marking gauge. So let's see here. My sled's a little tight, but better than being loose. All right, piece of scrap I'm going to use here as a stop. So make sure I haven't moved it. And then clamp this in place. A little bit left is fine. And there you go. Okay, actually, before I go to the bench to remove the waste from the outsides of the board, I figured I'd go ahead and do the next step that I use to remove the waste from in between the tails, which, again, you can use various methods, coping saw, whatever. I use the bandsaw for a board this size. I just found it easy, so let me go ahead and do that and show you how to do it. Okay, so now let me start taking out the rest of the waste on the tailboard. And you just pop these out. Let's see here. Okay. And I'll just clean these up. This is poplar, pretty soft. Here. Let's just pop off the edge. Okay. All right. You can see it starting to come together. Again, that's how I like using the table saw. It just makes a nice clean edge. I know I'm taking off the same amount on both sides. So now what I'm going to do is take out that center waste in between the tails. What I have here is a piece of sacrificial MDF. I don't want to destroy my bench. By taking chunks out with a chisel. And then also, you'll often see people obviously use a guide board to help, keep the chisel under control. One thing I found early on in doing that, which I found always annoying, is that you put the board on there, you're trying to clamp it, and it needs to stay right in place, and the thing starts moving around, or when you clamp it, it slides. It's always annoyed the heck out of me. So what I did With this board is use some spray adhesive and just put a piece of sandpaper on it. You know, I've used this, you can tell, for a long time. And what I like about it is once you put it in place, you can like move it around and get it lined up. And it's much easier to control when you're clamping it so it doesn't move from where you put it. So let me just make sure this is, feel this is smooth. Right there is where the board would usually move on me. And I tell you, when you whack on this thing, don't be shy. Okay. Let's see here. Let me see another chisel to help me clean this thing out. Here we go. Okay. You know, and sometimes I'll go on the other side. You know, maybe I'll do that here just so I don't get any tear out. You know what I mean? I'll go on the other side to take out this little bit on the end here. Let me move this over here so I can get the other side. Okay, now there's a little cleaning up I need to do in between the tails after cutting out the waste. And what I like to do also is to make sure it's flat, is I kind of get my T-square and just make sure it's touching all the way across. Yeah, looks pretty good. All right. Okay, so now what I want to do is mark out the pins on the pin board. And something I do to help me line up the dovetails over the pin board is I usually will get a piece of scrap wood like this and attach it to the tail board to use it as kind of like a fence. And then let me get a block to hold up the end. Something from another outdoor project that I did. And of course, like I said before, I want to, just to make sure I don't screw this up, mark the waste I want to remove. Okay, so now I'm going to start the process of cutting out the waste on the pin board where the tails are going to go. So I'm using the same saw I used to cut the actual dovetails. So here we go. Okay. All right, and so now I'll go over to the bandsaw and start taking out more of the waste there. sandpaper really helps. Okay. Do this. Okay, so now let me unclip that and clean up. You can see where I need to clean up so it's flat across the tail socket, but let me take the board off and do that. So now I'm going to continue my chisel work cleaning up the tail sockets. I'm going to start with a skew chisel here. And again, I'm just trying to flatten this area here where the tails are going to go, obviously. Trying as hard as I can not to impact where I've already cut with the chisel, because I know that was, I used a guide for that, and I know it's flat. So I'm going to try. Let's see here. Not cut my finger off. Almost. All right. That is pretty flat. So now what I'm going to do is start the process of fitting the tails into the tail socket. First thing I do to minimize damage to the pins is I put a little chamfer on the inside edge of the dovetails, but not going all the way out to the edge because I don't want to see it. Okay, and something else I do, I read this in a magazine once, a while ago, which is a great idea, I think. I use pencil lead to kind of mark the inside edges of the tails, which kind of serves two purposes, actually. One is you could tell as you're fitting it, you know, where the rubbing is happening. And also being graphite, it's a little bit of a lubricant to help slide the pieces together. So, all right, let's try the first fit. And of course it should be snug, but not to the point where it's gonna, you know, split something. So that's pretty tight, too tight. So let's see where the rubbing's at. If you look at like that area, there's no rubbing, or that area as well in the front there. So, and it's somewhat similar on this side, and the amount of rubbing is different. So obviously when I'm going to start removing material to improve the fit, I'm just going to focus on this part of the dovetail to take off, and likewise this part, or I mean the pin socket, and try as hard as possible to leave this alone, those sections alone, because it already fits there. Okay. Probably force it, but still don't feel comfortable with this. So let me try it again and see where it's rubbing. Okay, so I finished that iterative process, and here is the dovetail. So what I'll do now is glue it together and then plane it down so you can see what the finished product looks like. So the piece has been sitting overnight. Went ahead and glued it up, and let's unclamp it and see what it looks like. Clamps out of the way. All right, just so I can see. Not too bad. Let me do this so you can take a look. Okay. All right, so this is what it looks like. Let's see here, and so what I'll do now is just like I said, the ends of the pin board and tail board are slightly proud, which was the plan. So that's the inside actually. So what I'll do now is I will get my small block plane and smooth out the edges, sand it, and take another look. So this is the finished product. You know, not perfect, but not too bad. Like anything else, the more you do something, the better you get at it. Practice is a good thing. So yeah, I'll take it. Again, thanks for tuning in to this, my first episode of Woodworking with Jerry. This has been a lot of fun. It's going to be a good retirement project. We'll see. But if you liked it, got something out of it, let me know. And stay tuned for more episodes. All right, with that, so long.